multiple conferences have a chance to get 2 teams into the playoffs. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? It's me again, Gold and Blue Dude, and if you haven't already, go ahead and pound that subscribe button into submission if you're a college football fan, because whether you agree with me, want to trash talk to me, or trash talk with me, you're going to enjoy this channel. Notre Dame beating Clemson is a big deal, not just for Notre Dame, but for all of college football. It opened the doors for a lot of things, and it kind of not closed the door, but kind of pushed it closer to being shut for other teams. If there's one thing that I am certain of right now is that there are no actual locks for the playoffs. Now, Alabama is as close to a lock as there is right now, but even with the crazy things that have happened, I still wouldn't consider Alabama a 100% lock. However, I do think they will make the playoffs. They are 6-0. They have 2 good wins, Texas A&M and Georgia. Remaining schedule, at LSU, home against Kentucky, home against number 24, Auburn, and then at Arkansas, and then the SEC Championship. I think if Alabama goes undefeated in the season and then somehow got upset against Florida in the SEC Championship, they would be in, and Florida would be in if Florida wins the rest of their games. Florida, the other team in the SEC that could get into the playoffs. They have a good win against Georgia. No bad losses. They lost to Texas A&M, but that's not a bad loss. They're 4-1. Remaining schedule, home against Arkansas, at Vanderbilt, home against Kentucky, at Tennessee, home against LSU, and then the big one, the SEC Championship. If Florida can win out, stun Alabama, they're in. But then there's a third team that has a chance for the SEC, and that is Texas A&M. No bad losses. They lost to Alabama, and they have a win over Florida. Remaining schedule, at Tennessee, home against Ole Miss, home against LSU, and then at number 24, Auburn. I don't think that they will get to the SEC Championship, though, because Alabama would have to lose twice, because even if Alabama somehow slipped up and lost once, they would still own the tiebreaker. But if some other things happen, Texas A&M could slide their way through. First things first, they would need Alabama to beat Florida, to knock Florida out. So let's talk about the ACC. Well, Notre Dame is now at the top of the list. They are 7-0 with a great win over Clemson. Remaining schedule, though, a little tricky. Next game, at Boston College, not a gimme. At North Carolina, not a gimme. Home against Syracuse, and then at Wake Forest, and then the ACC Championship. If Notre Dame can go undefeated, it doesn't matter if they lose by 3 or 30 in the ACC Championship to Clemson. They would still be in because they would have that win over Clemson. Speaking of Clemson, they are number 4. They are 7-1. No bad losses. They did lose to Notre Dame, and they do have a great win over Miami. Remaining schedule, at Florida State, home against Pitt, and then at Virginia Tech, and then the ACC Championship. So if Clemson can win out, which we all know they're fully capable, they're getting Lawrence back, Clemson could join Notre Dame by beating Notre Dame, and there you go. 2 ACC teams are in. If Clemson were to slip up and lose another game, or Notre Dame lose 2 of their remaining games, which is very possible. That's a tricky last 4 games, 3 road games. Then Miami, if they won out, they would get into the ACC Championship. They would have to win that. Their remaining schedule, at Virginia Tech, home against Georgia Tech, at Wake Forest, and then home against North Carolina. Not easy by any stretch. Then they would get another crack at Clemson, or would get a chance to upset Notre Dame. The ACC has 3 teams that has legitimate chances to get in. And yet there's a third conference that could technically get 2 teams in. The Big Ten. Of course we know about Ohio State. Remaining games, at Maryland, home against number 10 Indiana, at Illinois, at Michigan State, and then home against Michigan. So they really don't have a tough remaining schedule. They get the home game against Indiana, but that's at home. But then the Big Ten Championship, where they would probably play Wisconsin, if Wisconsin can get healthy. So Ohio State could be one team. Like I said, I wouldn't call them a lock either. They didn't look all that great against Penn State or Rutgers. The next team is number 10, Indiana. This team has come out of nowhere, and the biggest part of that is their quarterback, Penix. He is awesome. They are 3-0. Remaining schedule at Michigan State, at number 3, Ohio State. That will be their measuring stick. Home against Maryland, at number 13, Wisconsin, if Wisconsin can get healthy. And then home against Purdue. And if they were to beat Ohio State, they would get into the Big Ten championship, even with a loss to Wisconsin. So with Ohio State and Indiana, for me, that would be an either or. Now the other team that could make it 2 for the Big Ten would be Wisconsin. Now, they've been having COVID issues, but if they can get that figured out, they're 1-0, remaining schedule at Michigan, at number 23, Northwestern, home against Minnesota, home against number 10, Indiana, and then at Iowa. So they would have a few quality wins in there, but at this rate, they would only be 6-0 going into the Big Ten championship. But you do that, you beat Ohio State, I still think you would need a little bit of help, like with the Florida A&M or the ACC situation to get in. But the odds of getting into the playoffs would be pretty good with a little help. So standing in these 3 conferences' way of getting 2 teams in, number 7, Cincinnati. They are 6-0. Remaining schedule, home against East Carolina, and then finish off the season with 3 road games at UCF, at Temple, and then at Tulsa, and then the AAC championship game, which they would probably play number 19 SMU again. Here's the thing about Cincinnati. They already have some good wins. Army, SMU, Memphis. Yes, those are good wins. And they could pick up another one at UCF and then at Tulsa and then another one in the AAC championship game against SMU. That would be a great resume, and that could definitely get in the way of the SEC, ACC, or Big Ten of getting 2 teams into the playoffs. So there you go. SEC, ACC, or Big Ten, they all have legitimate chances of getting 2 teams into the playoffs. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.